The waiter laughed at the old veteran. Then all the customers stood up. In that bustling downtown restaurant, the sound of silverware and cheerful conversation filled the air. It was a luxurious setting, where customers sported expensive clothes and fake smiles. But amidst the gleam of glasses and the aroma of expensive food, one figure stood out completely. An elderly man, gray-haired and dressed simply, slowly pushed his wheelchair down the aisle. Each movement seemed to weigh years. He wasn't just carrying a tired body. He was carrying stories that time had tried to erase. Silence fell for a few seconds, until the waiter, seeing him approach, let out a muffled laugh. "Sir, this place isn't for everyone. You must have made a mistake." The words cut through the air like a blade. Some customers looked, others chuckled quietly. The old veteran simply lowered his head, trying to hide the pain that his wrinkles could no longer disguise. But no one there knew who was really sitting in that wheelchair. No one knew the weight of the uniform he wore decades ago. No one knew how many nights he spent awake, saving lives that today might be laughing at those same tables. The waiter, feeling powerful, turned to his colleagues and murmured, "Look at that lost grandpa looking for a discount." More laughter, more contempt. But something was about to happen. A twist that would turn laughter into silence, arrogance into regret, and contempt into tears of shame. The veteran, still silent, stared at the ground. Memories returned, the sound of gunshots, the smell of gunpowder, the screams of comrades falling one by one. He closed his eyes for a moment. The restaurant vanished. In his mind, he was still on the battlefield, and while the waiter laughed, he only whispered. They laughed too, before dying. No one heard, but fate did. And destiny likes to do justice when the world is silent. His name was Antonio Duarte, but no one there cared to know. To the customers and employees, he was just the old man in the wheelchair. Antonio lived alone in a small room in the suburbs, where the damp walls held the echo of memories he could never bury. In the corner of the room, a flag folded neatly over the bed. Beside it, a yellowed photograph. A group of young soldiers covered in mud, smiling amidst the destruction. Antonio was second from the right, his gaze fixed, a cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth. He had fought for his country. He carried the weight of uniforms, orders, and the bodies of his comrades. But in the end, the world forgot him. Now, with his years advancing and his legs paralyzed, he survived on a small pension, just enough to buy medicine and some bread. The restaurant he visited that day was a distant dream, a luxury he never allowed himself. But today, it was different. It was the birthday of a war buddy, a comrade who never returned. And Antonio wanted to honor him the only way he knew how, by ordering a simple dish and toasting alone in silence. He carefully pushed his chair up to the counter. Every glance in his direction was a cruel reminder that time erases memories, but not scars. The waiter, impatient, watched him from afar. The customers whispered, some mocked, others looked away so as not to spoil the dinner. And the veteran, without raising his voice, simply said, "I'd like some soup. It's what they served in the barracks when someone fell in combat." The younger waitress, touched by his tired voice, took a step forward. But the older waiter stopped her with an arrogant gesture. "Don't waste your time. He probably doesn't even have the money to pay." That sentence was a surefire shot. Antonio's heart sank. He took a deep breath and, with effort, reached into his coat pocket. From it, he pulled out a small, worn wallet. Inside were an old medal and some folded bills. He looked at the waiter and said, "Money may be scarce, son, but dignity I still have." For a moment, the room fell silent. But the waiter didn't shut up. He laughed. He laughed out loud. And the laughter echoed like an insult to all the years that man had spent fighting for people who now treated him like a nuisance. The veteran remained calm. His eyes, however, told stories no one there could bear to hear. Stories of trenches, of broken promises, of friends buried with their own hands. As the waiter scoffed, the young waitress whispered, "I think I've seen this man before." But before she could say anything else, the twist was beginning to unfold. The waiter crossed his arms impatiently. The mocking smile on his face was a punch in the gut to anyone watching from the outside. "Look, sir, this isn't a popular restaurant. We don't serve cheap soup here, and you can't just take up tables just to rest, understand?" Some nearby customers laughed. Others pretended not to hear. After all, being indignant was hard work. The veteran Antonio remained silent. His teary eyes reflected the shame he tried to hide. It was as if every laugh echoed back from the battlefield, mingling with the war cries that still haunted him in his dreams. He tried to answer, his voice trembling. I just wanted to have lunch. I have money, yes. I just wanted to feel like a human being for a day. The waiter snorted. People, you're disturbing the real customers. Please lift that chair and leave before I call security. The entire restaurant stopped. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Some looked at him with pity, others with contempt. No one moved. No one said anything. Antonio looked around. He saw only apathetic, empty faces. People who, decades ago, might have had the same pride he defended. But now, they were merely spectators of a humiliation. The veteran's hands trembled on the chair's armrests. He felt his blood boil, not with anger, but with helplessness. How many times had he seen that same look of superiority? In the officers who despised him, in the politicians who promised to care for veterans and then forgot them. The world has always been quick to applaud heroes, and even quicker to discard them. The young waitress, tears in her eyes, tried to intervene. Please, he's not doing anything wrong. But the waiter raised his hand and interrupted her. Would you mind taking care of your tables, dear? This is a restaurant, not a nursing home. The audience reacted with whispers. A woman at the back table commented softly, It's absurd, but then again, the place is fancy, isn't it? It doesn't suit us. The husband replied, Forget it, it's not our problem. And the veteran stood there, small in the face of human arrogance. The humiliation was palpable. The old man took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears. He took the medal from his pocket and looked at it, as if seeking strength in the past. I fought for this country, he murmured. But the waiter laughed again. Yeah, and now you're struggling to pay for lunch. What a hero, huh? The laughter echoed. The restaurant audience, complicit in the silence, watched everything with indifference. Antonio then lowered his head, turned his chair, and began to walk away. But at that exact moment, the restaurant door opened. The sound of the metal bell echoed like thunder. 3 men in uniform entered. Their heavy boots pounded on the marble floor. Their serious, determined gazes cut through the room like knives. The waiter, still laughing, didn't even realize what was about to happen. But fate was about to exact a heavy price for his laughter. The silence was broken by the steady sound of boots echoing on the restaurant floor. 3 men in uniform entered with imposing bearing, their faces serious, their gazes attentive. They were young, but their eyes held the same weight that only those who have faced hell know. The waiter, not understanding, continued with his arrogant air. Gentlemen, how many tables are there? But none of them answered. The tallest, with a tense expression, stopped right in front of the veteran who was trying to discreetly leave in his wheelchair. Sergeant Duarte? The soldier asked, his voice breaking. The old veteran slowly looked up. That face, that uniform, that timbre of voice. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. How do you know my name? Antonio asked, surprised. The soldier swallowed hard, took off his cap and replied, Sir, my grandfather spoke of you. He said you saved his life. During the Battle of Monteverde, he said that if it weren't for you, I wouldn't even be here today. The entire restaurant fell silent. The waiter, confused, looked around. The customers stopped eating. Conversations ceased. A shiver ran through the room. The soldier knelt before the veteran. It's an honor to meet you, sir. The words echoed like a thunderclap of respect, a truth that broke the heavy air of injustice. The other 2 soldiers followed suit. One of them pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. We brought this on behalf of the battalion, sir. We thought you'd like to receive back what's yours. Inside the box was a gold medal, gleaming even in the cold light of the restaurant. Antonio's eyes widened. It was the medal he had lost the day he was wounded. The same one he believed had been buried with his uniform. His hands trembled as he held it again. How did you get this? He asked, overcome with emotion. The soldier smiled. We make a point of honoring those who came before us, sir. You paved the way so we could serve with pride. Tears streamed silently down the veteran's face. The waiter, who had been laughing at him a few minutes earlier, now watched silently, unsure of what to say. The customers, those who had been whispering, were now standing, paralyzed by the weight of shame. The waitress, her eyes brimming with tears, whispered, "He saved lives, and we treated him like dirt." The younger soldier turned to the waiter. "This man is a hero. You should be on your knees in gratitude for being able to serve him." The waiter bowed his head. The sound of shame was deafening. The veteran looked at the young soldiers. "You don't need to thank me. Just promise one thing. Keep fighting for what's right, and never ever forget those left behind." The taller one replied, his voice firm, "You're welcome, sir. As long as there's a soldier standing, your name will never be forgotten." The room, which minutes before had vibrated with laughter and scorn, was now filled with reverent silence. The customers began to rise one by one. First, a soft applause, then another, until the entire restaurant was on its feet, applauding this old man who, until minutes ago, had been humiliated. The turnaround was complete. The truth revealed. The hero rediscovered. And in that instant, no one remembered the arrogant waiter anymore. Only the man in the wheelchair, who carried with him the honor the world had forgotten. The applause grew. At first timid, then loud, intense, filled with regret. Each clap was like an unspoken apology. Each look a silent attempt to make amends for the unforgivable. The waiter, still holding his notebook, didn't know where to hide his face. Sweat dripped down his forehead. He looked around, seeking support, but there was no more laughter. Those same people who, minutes before, had joined him in the mockery, now looked at him with contempt. The manager appeared, drawn by the commotion. "What's going on here?" she asked, looking around. One of the soldiers replied firmly, "Your employee just humiliated a war hero." The silence was deathly. The manager looked at the veteran, that frail man in the wheelchair, with the medal trembling in his hands, and she understood everything. "Sir, forgive me. You shouldn't have gone through this." She turned to the waiter. "You're fired, and leave now. This man will be served as he deserves, with respect." The waiter tried to justify himself, his voice breaking. "I didn't know. I just thought—" "You thought wrong," the manager interrupted. "And now you'll learn that appearance doesn't always reveal who a person is." The customers, still standing, began to applaud again, this time louder. The young waitress, tears in her eyes, approached the veteran and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Sir, allow me to serve you today. It will be an honor." Antonio smiled, a tired but sincere smile. "It's been a while since I've heard that word, honor." She ran to the kitchen. In a few minutes, she returned with a hot, simple dish, vegetable soup, the same one he had ordered at the beginning, the same one they served in the barracks when a soldier fell in combat. When the plate was placed in front of him, the soldiers saluted. The entire restaurant watched in silence. It was more than a meal. It was the world asking for forgiveness from a man who had already given his all and expected nothing in return. The waiter, humiliated, left with his head bowed. Outside, the cold street wind bit his face, but what really hurt was the weight of his conscience. He looked through the window, saw the veteran smiling amidst applause, and finally understood. Antonio, in turn, looked around. He saw the people standing, applauding. He saw the soldiers beside him, and for a moment he was no longer in that restaurant. In his mind, he was back on the battlefield, only this time the applause wasn't out of fear but out of gratitude. He raised the spoon to his mouth, closed his eyes, and whispered softly, "For you, my brothers in uniform. For you." A respectful silence filled the room. Even the coldest of them felt a lump in their throats. It was impossible not to be moved by that scene, a veteran finally being recognized after so many years of being forgotten. And in that instant, something magical happened. Humiliation turned to honor. Shame turned to applause. Injustice turned to a lesson. The hero the world had forgotten was now remembered by all. The restaurant, previously noisy and full of idle chatter, was now silent. A different silence. Heavy, full of meaning. All eyes were on the old veteran who, with trembling hands, held the spoon as if holding a memory. That simple meal now tasted of dignity. The taste he thought he would never taste again. The soldiers remained there beside him. None of them said a word. They didn't need to. Their presence was enough. The waitress, who had previously been observing everything from afar, approached once more. With a choked voice, she asked, "Sir, how do you feel seeing all this?" Antonio looked at her calmly. "Daughter, I fought my whole life for people to have the right to live in peace. But I never imagined that one day I would have to fight to be treated with respect." He paused, looked at his plate, and continued, "The world changes, you know, but the human heart sometimes forgets what gratitude is." His words echoed through the room. It was as if time had stopped. Everyone there now carried an invisible weight, their conscience. The waiter outside listened through the half-open window. Antonio's words hit him like a punch in the gut. He remembered the smile he'd given when he'd laughed at the veteran, and now that same smile embarrassed him. Antonio raised his head and looked around. When someone wears a uniform, they don't do it for money or fame. They do it because they believe they're protecting something greater. But when the war ends, the soldier returns, and the world has already forgotten him. Tears began to stream from the waitress's eyes. Some customers were also crying silently. Others simply lowered their heads, not daring to face that man who, even though he couldn't walk, was standing upright inside. Antonio took a deep breath and concluded, "Respect is the only medal we should all wear." Applause. This time it wasn't just out of emotion. It was out of repentance, out of gratitude for something the world stopped valuing a long time ago. The manager came to him with an envelope in her hands. "Sir, we want to offer you a month's worth of meals. It's the least we can do." But the veteran smiled and refused. "I don't want anything for free. I just want the next time an old man walks through this door, he'll be treated with the same respect you would give a king." The soldiers approached, placed their hands on his shoulder, and said together, "Sir, you are still one of us." And it was then that he smiled. A calm, serene smile, full of peace. Perhaps for the first time in years, he felt he was no longer forgotten. He turned to the waitress and said, "Thank you, daughter. Today, you reminded me that there is still kindness in the world." As he left the restaurant, the sun was beginning to set. The golden light touched his wrinkled face and reflected off the medal on his chest. Outside, the people who had been watching made room for him, silently, respectfully. And for an instant, everyone understood the true meaning of honor. The restaurant returned to its normal routine. But something had changed. No one laughed out loud like before. No one glanced at the tables with the same hurried, superficial gaze. The air still carried the memory of the scene everyone had witnessed. The chair the veteran had occupied remained there, empty. But it was no ordinary chair. It was a silent symbol, a reminder that sometimes a soldier's greatest battle begins after the war. The waitress, who had previously only served food, now also served empathy. She looked each customer in the eye, trying to imagine their stories. The waiter, the one who had mocked, quit the next day. He said he couldn't work there anymore after what he'd done. But before leaving, he left a note on the counter. "Today I learned that a hero's uniform can be invisible, and that respect isn't a gesture, it's a duty." The manager had the note framed and hung it on the restaurant's main wall, just above the table where the veteran had sat. From that day on, all new employees were required to read that note before starting work. The veteran's story spread. Customers returned just to sit at that table, take photos, and reflect. Some left flowers, others left letters. And in each letter was the same message: "Thank you for reminding us what it means to have honor." Months later, the restaurant received an unexpected visitor. A group of young soldiers entered, wearing clean uniforms and with firm eyes. One of them held a small wooden box. Inside was a medal. The waitress, confused, asked, "Can I help you?" The soldier responded with emotion. "This medal belongs to the veteran who came here a few months ago. He passed away last week and asked us to give this to you." She brought her hands to her mouth, trying to hold back tears. The soldier continued, "He said that day, here, was the first day in a long time that he felt alive. He said he finally realized that his fight was worth it." Silence. Tears. The entire restaurant stood still as if time had stopped again. The waitress held the medal to her chest. On the gold plaque, a simple inscription: "For bravery and loyalty in times of darkness." She hung the medal next to the note, forming a small shrine, a symbolic altar of respect and remembrance. Since then, every time someone entered the restaurant and looked at that wall, they felt something different. It wasn't just emotion, it was awareness. The narrator concludes in a serious tone, full of truth. In a world where many forget gratitude, there are still stories that remind us who the heroes truly are. Not the ones on TV, but the ones who walk among us, silently, with invisible scars and hearts marked by war. And then, the final sentence echoes like a scar in the viewer's mind. Never laugh at those who carry the weight of the past, because they might be the same man who secured your future.